Previously, on my fellow Nigerians,
You can count on me, sir.
We are only the revolution brothers.
Now, what are your relations with General Iramsi in Lagos?
Well, very good. He's my boss. I have always been under him, and I still am under him. There isn't really any problem with you. Misunderstandings arose, but this was due to the publication in the press and by announcements over the radio. At one time, they started calling us in Kaduna rebels, whereas in fact the revolution was all a planned affair all over the country. And
our D-Day started earliest in Kaduna. Exercise Damisa, which had been organized for several weeks and rehearsed on the evening of January 13th, was finally staged. Essentially, Exercise Damisa was a night exercise aimed at capturing enemy objectives and holding the grounds captured. On the D-Day, the exercise was completed at about 0130 hours. Then the officers were summoned and briefed about the political situation in the country. They were told about the decision of the revolutionary officers to bring the situation under control by prompt military action, which had been planned to be nationwide. The officers who hailed from every part of the country were given the opportunity to participate in the action or withdraw. All of them enthusiastically volunteered to participate, and they were given specific orders as follows. A. The arrest of the Northern Premier, the Sardauna of Sokoto, and Alhaji Aliyu Makama Bida, the Northern Region Minister of Finance, Major Nzeogu, a captain, and 2 subalterns. B. The arrest of the Northern Governor Sir Kashim Ibrahim and Brigadier Ademoyega, Major Onwategu. C. The arrest of Colonel Ralph Shodeinde, Captain Ude, and a subaltern. D. The occupation of strategic locations, Captain Bullier and 6 subalterns. In addition, this group had the task of informing the brigade headquarters, staff officers of the coup to ensure their support. The staff officers included Major Alfonso Keshi, the brigade major. After the orders, light ammunition was issued to all groups. The Nzogu group made for the Premier's Lodge. It was an impregnable castle with a massive iron gate fitted with automatic alarms. Because of this, 5 rounds of the 84mm Carl Gustav anti-tank recoils rifle had to be fired to destroy the gate and gain entrance into the lodge. During the firing of the Carl Gustav, the front part of the lodge caught fire. In spite of that, the Premier resisted arrest and sought to escape from the building. In the scuffle that ensued, he was shot. After that, the group made for the quarters of Alhaji Aliyu Makama Bida. He was missed altogether as he had traveled out of town. Next, the group went to the residence of Colonel Shodeinde. He resisted arrest and was shot. Then the group moved to the brigade headquarters to receive the reports of the remainder of the operation. Major Nzogu, who had been injured during the attack on the Premier's Lodge, was treated there. Soon, Major Onwategu reported to the HQ with the arrested Governor Sir K. Ibrahim, who had conducted himself most gently and had been treated courteously. He was detained at the HQ for some hours but was later allowed to go home. On the other hand, Brigadier Ademoyega was not brought to the HQ under arrest. He had already been shot. Captain Bullier's group took control of all the strategic positions in the city, including the local station of the Nigerian Broadcast Corporation, the ammunition service depot, the Northern Nigerian radio and television stations, the telephone exchange, the State House, and so on. In addition, they set up roadblocks on the various approaches to the town. Having done this, they contacted the staff officers of the brigade headquarters and informed them of the revolution and at the same time requested their support. By the first light of January 15th, Major Nzeogu was in complete control of the situation in Kaduna. But there were still some unit commanders in the city and in Zaria and Kano who were not part of the revolution and had yet to be contacted in order to know whether they would support the revolution. These included Major A. Madiebo of the Nigerian Army Artillery, Major Hassan Katsina of the Nigerian Reconnaissance Corps, Lieutenant Colonel Bassi of the Nigerian Army Depot at Zaria, and Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu of the 5th Battalion, Kano. It was Captain Bully who had orders to contact Keshi, and it was the latter who contacted Madiebu. Madiebu found that the subalterns of his own unit had already turned full-fledged revolutionaries, to the point of obeying only Nzeogu. Therefore, he reluctantly gave his support, but was minded to foil the revolution. This was because Madiebu was tribalistic to the core. For instance, he had told Ifejuna long before the coup that he believed that in Nigeria, tribal loyalties were stronger than national ones. Nzeogu himself went to see Major Hassan Katsina at home. He discussed the situation with the latter, who albeit rather reluctantly gave his support and ordered the officers of his own unit to report to Nzeogu for further deployment. Next, Nzeogu sent a message to Lieutenant Colonel Bassi, a veteran of the Second World War. The latter did not know what the revolution was all about. Nonetheless, he submitted to the trend of things as they appeared and gave in to the revolution. There remained Lieutenant Colonel Ojukwu. Ojukwu was both crafty and selfish, and would neither give nor withhold his loyalty. He was running with the hare and chasing with the hounds. He was an opportunist who put himself above the safety of the nation. When at first Nzeogu contacted him on the phone, he was fully in agreement with the revolution. Soon after that, he was in touch with Ironsi, to whom he pledged his loyalty. After that, he was playing hide and seek with Nzeogu, mainly biding his time. The activities of Nzeogu on the morning of the coup were directed towards the consolidation of his night victory. He moved quite fast to ensure that those officers who did not participate in the coup were given their chance to declare either way. But Nigerians, being what they were, fought shy of the truth and declared for the revolution, when in fact they were opposed to it. Admittedly though, if the revolution had been luckier, if it had remained in the hands of the forebearers, it would certainly have survived and triumphed over its enemies. Unfortunately, that was not so. Now, having received the profession of loyalty, Nzeogu proceeded to bring all the military and air force units of the northern region under his express command. This step was absolutely necessary. In the first place, it had been a regular military drill to hold firmly to the ground one. That ground to him was northern Nigeria, and he had to hold it tight. Secondly, by noon on the 15th, it had become clear to him that the operation in Lagos had been compromised. He had received neither military nor civilian communication from any of us. Therefore, he could see that the battle was not yet fully won. Like the soldier that he was, Nzeogu was prepared and willing to carry on with the fight. By the morning of the 15th, he had summoned the top regional civil servants to his headquarters. Having received their pledges of loyalty, he briefed them on how to carry out their duties under his interim administration. He knew that things would soon have to change, but in the meantime, the governing of the people did not have to be interrupted. In the same way, he brought the police under control, and having received their pledge of loyalty, ordered them to carry on their duties with deference to the spirit of the revolution. Again, he knew that things were bound to change if the revolution succeeded. As for the politicians, no further action was contemplated against them, that they should sign a pledge to refrain from further politicking while they returned to their private businesses. This was also an action in furtherance with the principle of the revolution. Only a few of them were detained in prison custody. After midday on the 15th, when the situation report from Lagos showed clearly that the capital was not in the hands of the revolutionaries, Nzeogu did the only right and proper thing. He immediately prepared a broadcast which helped to establish it quite clearly to the south as well to the outside world that the north was firmly in the hands of the revolutionaries. Later the same day, after Ironsi had broadcast his wicked and reactionary message about the so-called rebels, Nzeogu went on the air and broadcast his brilliant, revolutionary, and highly edifying declaration. It went as thus. In the name of the Supreme Council of the Revolution of the Nigerian Armed Forces, I declare martial law over the northern provinces of Nigeria. The Constitution is suspended and the regional governments and elected assemblies are hereby dissolved. The aim of the Revolutionary Council is to establish a strong, united, and prosperous nation free from corruption and internal strife. Our method of achieving this is strictly military, but we have no doubt that every Nigerian will give us maximum cooperation by assisting the regime and not disturbing the peace during the slight changes that are taking place. My dear countrymen, you will hear and probably see a lot being done by certain bodies charged by the Supreme Council with the duties of national integration, supreme justice, general security, and property recovery. This is not a time for long speech making, and so let me acquaint you with the proclamations in the extraordinary orders of the day which the Supreme Council has promulgated. You are hereby warned that looting, arson, homosexuality, rape, embezzlement, bribery or corruption, obstruction of the revolution, sabotage, subversion, false alarms, and assistance to foreign invaders are all offenses punishable by death sentence. Our enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 10%. Those that seek to keep the country divided permanently so that they can remain in office as ministers or VIPs at least. The tribalists, the nepotists, those that make the country look big for nothing before international circles, those that have corrupted our society and put the Nigerian political calendar back by their words and deeds. Like good soldiers, we are not promising anything miraculous or spectacular, but what we do promise every law-abiding citizen is freedom from fear and all forms of oppression, freedom from general inefficiency, and freedom to live and strive in every field of human endeavor, both nationally and internationally. My dear countrymen, this is the end of this speech. I wish you all good luck, and I hope you will cooperate to the fullest in this job which we have set for ourselves of establishing a prosperous nation and achieving solidarity. Thank you very much, and goodbye for now. The contents of this broadcast are clear and need no further elaboration. Suffice to say that they show that the revolution was duly born, that it was capable of being nurtured into life in the competent hands of some of those who conceived it and labored for it. But if the revolutionary child was turned into a stillborn, it was because the water of the world into which it was born became poisonous to it and killed it. This brave and powerful broadcast had the effect of according full credibility to the revolution, while at the same time, it damnified the bigotry of Ironsi and his reactionary clique. Having achieved this much, Nzeogwu was quick to make plans for the control of the remainder of Nigeria. To execute this plan, by the morning of 16th January, he called the conference of all the officers in Kaduna to give them his orders. First, he divided all his troops into 3 crack task forces. The first task force was to move north and take Zaria and Kano, to consolidate his control of those areas and to make the forces therein available for his southern operations. The second task force was to advance southwest through Jeba to Ibadan. It was to take Ibadan and prepare the ground for launching into Lagos. The third task force was to advance southeast to Enugu through Makudi. It was to take Enugu and launch southwest to take Benin and to hold the 2 regions firmly for the revolution. This was an excellent plan, revolutionary in principle and perfectly tactical in concept. There was no doubt that this plan would have succeeded completely. For one thing, success comes in such movements, and at such moments was always on the side of the revolutionaries. Secondly, the morale of the participating officers and men was extremely high and conducive to success. Thirdly, all attempts by Ironsi to fight the revolutionaries would have failed woefully because the nation itself was jubilant that the coup had been staged and that peace had returned to the country. The acting president of the Federation, Dr. Nwafo Orizu, could not appoint a substitute prime minister since he did not know the fate of Alhaji Abubakar. Ministers were ready to hand over government of the Federation to the armed forces. Everybody everywhere in the Federation rejoiced at the overthrow of the Balewa government and toasted the revolutionaries. University students throughout the Federation hailed Nzeogwu and the revolutionaries. These were proof that the revolution was popular. Unfortunately, it was at this stage that the revolution proved most unlucky. For as soon as Nzeogwu finished his order and before the officers dispersed to prepare for the battle, Major Madiebo sought Nzeogo's attention and impressed it on him that the revolution battle was very unnecessary. He argued that since Ironsi had accepted the coup as a fait accompli, it was all that Nzeogo could wish for. He insisted that Nzeogo would be demonstrating an unbridled lust for power if he launched his proposed attack. He advised Nzeogo to cancel his plans and surrender to Ironsi, who would gladly carry out Nzeogo's revolutionary plans. But it was an act of deceit. Madiebo was being mischievous. He did not reveal to Nzeogo that he was in constant contact with Ironsi and Gowon, who had both instructed him to destroy Nzeogo's revolution. He pretended to be talking in earnest to Nzeogo and posed to be a friend of the revolution. By this, Madiebo showed himself as an enemy of the revolutionary Nigeria. This was the reason why an officer of Madiebo's caliber did not reach the peak of his career and output except in the tribal and reactionary war of Ojukwu in Biafra. Madiebo acted out as an instrument for Ojukwu and helped the latter to prolong the dreadful and wasteful war, which did nothing but destroy the cream of the Igbo race. I say this much because the initial wave of success in Kaduna was soon depressed by the reactionaries, headed in this case by Madiebo. He, in collaboration with Ironsi and Gowon, worked to extinguish the lights of the revolution. Nzeogo took Madiebo's deceit for good advice, stood down the troops and cancelled the plan. The reactionaries recorded success only at the barracks where they in effect staged a palace coup against the revolution. It was in this way that Ironsi usurped the revolution to his advantage and put some of the revolutionary officers to flight. Madiebo was destroying Nzeogo's will to fight, not on the battlefield where he could never have succeeded, but right at his military headquarters where he expected to be talking to another revolutionary officer, his own comrade in arms, but rather unfortunately was talking to a wolf in sheepskin, an enemy who believed as a friend and who had the avowed intention of getting a quick and tidy end to Nzeogo's revolution. Later on the 16th, when it became obvious that Ojukwu was not faithful to the revolution, Nzeogo requested to go to Kano both to collect money for the troops and to speak with Ojukwu. Madiebo tactfully turned down the request and suggested that a junior officer should be sent. Nzeogo agreed and sent Captain Udi. The latter was promptly arrested by Ojukwu. Nzeogo's natural reaction was to send a crack force under the command of Major Tim Onwatuegu to knock down some sense into the head of Odumegu Ojukwu in Kano. This force was ready by the first light of the 17th. It was well armed and provided with adequate supporting weapons and transports. He had got ready to go forth when Madiebo sighted it and intervened against it, to the detriment of the revolution. He suggested that the forces should be stopped and that he himself would speak to Ojukwu and obtain the release of Udi. It was another most dreadful blow against the development of the revolutionary spirit and power in Nigeria. If the Kano exploit had gone forth, it would have been successful. It would have dealt a blow to the bigotry of Ojukwu, and the revisionists and his ilk would have learned their lesson. More than that, it would have boosted the morale of the core of budding revolutionaries under the leadership of Nzeogo. Their aspirations contrasted with those of the reactionaries, who were materialistic, tribalistic, and jigonistic. These same people, some 20 months later, were bombing, shelling, and destroying the people of eastern Nigeria under the leadership of General Yakubu Gowon. This same Madiebo, who had earlier refused to go to Kano for the sake of the revolution, later agreed to act for the sake of Ojukwu, or rather for the sake of reaction, because the revolutionaries had been put to shame. With this, the palace coup against the revolution had succeeded almost completely. One more pressure on the revolutionary child breathed its last.